The first thing is how many students are trying to use just too many resources. And what ends up happening when they use too many resources is they get overwhelmed. And then what happens is, you sign up for a course or a program or an app, and that app or program has a set study plan with it. What happens is students sign up for so many different things, they never actually complete the initial plan that comes with all the apps and all the courses and programs that they bought. They show up on exam day and their mind's in 20 different places because they have so many different things they're working on. So I try and tell my students to hyper-focus. Once you've completed one thing, go through it all the way. I tell my students with my study plan in my video vault is go through the study plan at least twice. And then after you've watched the videos, then go take the quizzes. Then if you have questions, use the community group. So that way we're hitting the content, the actual quizzes to assess yourself, and I'm there to ask questions. So that's the first thing that I've learned. Now, the second thing I've learned is so many students don't understand the NREMT exam and what to expect when they go to take the exam. Meaning, did you know that NREMT has something called pilot questions? Meaning, a question that you're so nervous about when you take the exam and, oh, did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? It might have been a pilot question. Meaning, what a pilot question is, it's a question that NREMT is testing to see if it's going to be put in the official bank of questions that actually counts towards you passing or failing. But they're going to serve the question to you and get you all nervous about it. So what I tell my students is, if you're on, this is a positive mindset. If you're on a really tough question, like, man, I'm stopping this one. Hey, it could be a pilot question. Do your best and move on. Because I'll put on the screen right here from every exam level, you can see here, this is how many pilot questions there could be on your exam. So that's something to think about. You get a weird question, maybe it's a pilot question, okay? That'll calm your nerves a little bit. Hope that one helps. A little more on this topic, but we'll call it number 3 with understanding the exam, is understanding the content of the exam itself. So there's 5 sections of every national registry test. I'm just gonna flash on the screen here, every level, EMR, EMT, advanced EMT, and paramedic level. You can see there's the same 5 sections, but the percentages are a little different. But eventually it all ties together, these 5 sections. So it's airway, respiration, and ventilation. Then you have cardiology and resus. Then you have trauma. Then you have medical and OBGYN. And then you have EMS operations. Now you're going to be tested on adult and pediatric as well. So typically it's about 85% adult and then 15% pediatrics. The management, the pathophysiology, and the signs and symptoms of all of these emergencies and diseases in these categories. So this is why I teach my students the 1, 2, 3, 4 method. And what that is how you break down any emergency or disease. So number 1, what is a disease? Explain it in simple terms. So let's say we were talking about myocardial infarction. Here, let's put it up on the board. So 1 is, what is a myocardial infarction, right? Number 2 is, what are the risk factors of having a myocardial infarction? That's a heart attack, right? Myo, muscle, cardial, cardiac, the heart. Infarction means death. Heart muscles dying, that's a heart attack, right? All right. Number 3, tell me the hallmark signs and symptoms of a heart attack. Number 4, how do we treat it? If we know these 4 things about all the main emergencies and diseases, now we're in a great spot from looking at the 5 sections of registry, and now we're in a good spot to understand the questions, because those 4 things, it goes over exactly what they're asking you on the questions. So now we can figure out what to do with our patient, right? So number 4 is an interesting one. And this is just from my own feedback from working with students. So I've found that, especially with paramedic students, this is key. This is about my paramedics, is you have no chance at all of passing NREMT at the paramedic level if you do not know your medications and dosing and cardiology. What has happened is maybe you've gotten through your paramedic program, but maybe cardiology and pharmacology was rough for you, right? When you get to NREMT, you end up getting below passing in cardiology. Maybe you get up to NREMT and you're not confident with EKGs and 12-lead EKGs. This I've seen time and time again when paramedics come to me and say, why am I not passing? I passed school, I don't get it. And every single time, it's either cardiology or medications. And I'm like, that's the culprit. We find it, we fix it, and they pass. So if you're a paramedic, please hear me on that because I've seen it a lot. Now on the other side, with BLS providers like EMRs and EMTs, the issue I usually see in my students, it's the steps that they have messed up. So they're reading the question. Let's say you have an unresponsive patient. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an unresponsive patient and their airway needs to be managed. What will happen is they don't have a stepwise fashion for actually performing the care, and they end up just either guessing or they get confused. So this is why I teach my students that we have a stepwise, meaning if you go to a patient with an airway problem, and you need to ventilate for them, what's the first step? Well, the first step is we got to open their airway. The second step is we got to make sure the airway is clear. The third step is we have to secure the airway with an adjunct like OPA, NPA. The fourth step, ventilate. What this means is, in the question, if you've been unresponsive and they're not breathing, what this means, we need to open their airway first. So in the question, if they have not opened the airway yet, the answer is to open the airway, right? Now, what if they open the airway and they suctioned? Well, the airway's now clear. We've opened it already. Next step, adjunct. What if we did all three? Next step, ventilate, BVM, right? Another thing I've seen is students taking way too many practice test questions from way too many apps. So I do not recommend blasting 125 questions a day. Remember this, folks. When you take a practice question, you are only assessing yourself. You're not gaining more knowledge. So if you're weak in an area at the national level, then you're taking questions, you're still weak in that area. So remember this, studying makes you smarter. Practice questions assess your knowledge. You need to do both, but you're not studying, taking practice questions. You're just assessing yourself. So when you're supposed to be studying, don't just assess yourself. You get where I'm going with that? That's a big mistake I see people make when they first come to me and say, I failed and need help. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do you break down NREMT questions? You have to look for the Hallmark signs and symptoms. So pretend that you're looking at the screen and you're highlighting all of the what I call buzzwords. For example, if you hear like tired or sluggish respirations, that patient probably needs ventilation assistance, right? Or weak respirations. They're trying to show you the patient is barely able to keep up their respirations and they're probably in respiratory failure. We have to know the hallmark signs and symptoms to pick up on what the question is trying to do. So for example, like respiratory distress versus failure. So if I'm breathing at a very rapid rate, I'm probably still in distress. Whereby if I'm breathing like, say 8 or 6 and I'm cyanotic, I'm probably in failure, right? So where, this patient might need, let's say a neb, this patient needs ventilation right now, right? How long should you study before actually taking your exam? So first, you want to make sure that you get to your NREMT exam as soon as possible. I have so many students that message me and say, I've been out of school for a year, I've been out of school for a year and a half, I've been out of school for 2 years. That's a lot of time out of school. You're basically, at that point, restarting. Now, it's okay. This is why I do Paramedic Coach. This is why I created the Video Vault, to get you back refreshed, get you up to speed, and then we go pass. But I don't recommend waiting that long. I recommend as soon as you can go to your exam, go. Because because you're fresh out of school, right? Get your resource, start studying, get in there, and then take your exam as soon as possible. Now, what if you failed, right? What if you failed? I do not recommend you speeding back in 15 days like NREMT allows you to. I want you to take 3 to 4 weeks, and I want you to do a revised study plan. That's my advice. And then go over that plan at least twice. I always tell people, whatever you're using, go over it at least twice and make sure that it is something that gives you studying knowledge and assesses you. Just as one thing, then you're missing the other piece, right? We needed something that is able to do studying and assessing. That's how we're able to actually do effective studying for NREMT. So we take all that together. If we know the hallmark signs, symptoms, if we look out for those key terms and buzzwords and we know them, if we know the steps, if we know the algorithms, we've gone over and studied the 5 main sections of National Registry, we've used our study plan, we've gone over it twice, we use some quizzes to assess ourselves, we've done it over a several-week period, and we don't wait too long before after school, we're in a great spot to go past that exam, and I know you'll do it. Now, the first link in the description down below is what I give to all my students getting ready for the National Registry exam at every level. EMR, EMT, Advanced EMT, Paramedic, to get ready for your National Registry exam. It goes over all 5 main sections of National Registry with me teaching you all the content you need to know, quizzes to assess your knowledge, and our community group to ask questions while you're studying. And you have lifetime access to study at your own pace.